this crowd here. And I think that global warming and climate change really offers an opportunity to do that. And because it's something we need to work together with the world to address. And right now, there are the UN climate negotiations happening in Bali. And I guess I'd love to hear your vision for how you would interact with the world in solving global warming and what you would do, particularly with the United Nations.
Well, first of all, America has absolutely no credibility in addressing this issue globally right now. We're 4% of the world's population. We put out 25% of the world's greenhouse gases. We're the worst polluter on the planet. And on top of that, we're the biggest consumer of oil. We use 22 million barrels of oil a day. And so the problem is when we go to other countries and say, we need you to do this, their immediate response is, what are you doing? So I think America first has to get on a track to get us off our addiction to oil. Now here's what I do. I do believe this is a crisis. I saw a piece in a British newspaper a few weeks ago that talked about the polar ice cap being gone in 23 years if we don't alter our behavior. 23 years, and it will not come back. And I don't claim to be a scientist, but everybody in this room knows that white polar ice cap reflects the heat and rays of the sun. And when it's gone, the dark ocean is going to absorb that heat instead. So what do we need to do? I would cap carbon emissions for the entire country. And every year that cap should come down. We ought to have a minimum, and I really emphasize minimum of 80% reduction by the year 2050. Now that's where the consensus of the scientific community is today. You can make a great argument, though, that we're going to have to be more aggressive than that. And I'm wide open to being more aggressive. Now what we do is below the cap. The companies that are still putting out carbon dioxide, you make them participate in an auction and get a permit to do it. Use the proceeds of that. The estimates of what the proceeds are vary wildly, anywhere from $30 billion on the low side to $1 trillion on the high side. But let's use the most conservative estimate. You take that $30 billion and you invest it. You invest it in wind, solar, cellulose-based biofuels. You put $1 billion. So I think we should have a moratorium on the building of any more coal-fired power plants unless and until we have the ability to capture and sequester the carbon underground, which we don't have today. We should be investing in that, but development of that technology. We don't have it today. One thing that there is a difference, this is why, for those of you who are into this, there is a difference between me, Clinton, and Obama on nuclear power. I am opposed to building any more nuclear power plants. I do not think we should do that. And for a variety of reasons, no safe way to dispose of the waste. They've done some interesting work in France, but it's not there. The terrorist target that it creates, and it's incredibly expensive to build a nuclear power plant. So I'm against. And by the way, if we doubled our nuclear power plants in the world, it would deal with about 1/7 of the greenhouse gas issue. So I'm against that. And then we're going to have a president who actually asks Americans to be patriotic about something other than war, who says to America, we have to sacrifice together if we want to make this country what we're capable of being. All of us are going to have to be. It's the truth. I know the presidential candidates usually are promising this and promising that, but we cannot we can't just spin and innovate our way out of this. We're going to have to actually be willing to sacrifice, to change our behavior, to take responsibility as a nation. And that means we're going to have to conserve in our homes, in our workplaces. We're going to have to drive more fuel-efficient vehicles. You know, these plug-in hybrids are actually pretty amazing. That's just an example. But if we would convert America, or a big chunk of it, to plug-in hybrids and mass produce them, which we don't today, it would make an enormous difference in our oil consumption. So all those things, I think, are things that we need to do. And when we're doing those things, then we have the credibility to go to China, India, particularly China, where they're building more than one coal-fired power plant a week. They don't scrub any of them. And they're obsessed with their own internal economic development. And they are a huge contributor. They're actually in a competition with us to be the worst polluter on the planet. But we don't want to be part of that competition. We want to be leading and pulling China in the other direction and developing the technology to help them get there. Those are the things I do. You're welcome. Yes, sir.